Data Storytellers. Today, I'm here with Kenny Mettel, who is the Senior Vice President of Performance Analytics over at United Rentals. Thanks for coming on the show, Kenny.
My pleasure.
To start with, just tell us a bit about yourself, your journey to becoming an analytics leader and your journey to your current role.
Sure. So I go back to, before United Rentals, and I've been at United Rentals a while, but I worked for companies in the neighborhood in the areas of toys, paper, spaghetti sauce. So quite a variety. And my skill there, I was a finance person. I'm financially trained. Most of those jobs, however, I was using my financial skills and number skills to help general managers of business units. I was not in the corporate area, and I was using those skill sets to help our business leaders run their businesses. And I joined United Rentals it's been over 20 years now. And when I joined, I worked for the chief operating officer. And my job was to focus on our operations and help him use the data we had and the financials we had to understand priorities. So over the years, I helped build the financial planning and analysis department here. I was very lucky. My first few years here, I spent a lot of time in our branch network and in the field. And I learned a lot about our operating system. I learned a lot about the data people use. I learned a lot about the business. So about 7 years ago, our CEO at the time, now chairman of the board, came to me and said, "You know how to use information to help a business make better decisions, to look for opportunities, make decisions, and we're not using our data to its fullest. I want to start a department of," he called it big data at the time, and quickly started drinking through the fire hose and started figuring out, wait a second, this is about the data, but it's also about how do you use the data, and how do you put what I always used to do with Excel files, how do you put that on steroids to bring more and more insights to the business? And that's kind of what we started to build here.
Interesting. So you mentioned that you've been on this journey through financial planning and analysis, and then that's kind of evolved into the strategic planning analytics role. From your perspective, how did that journey manifest itself?
So I think that it was twofold. I think United Rentals has always been a company that uses data. We use data every single day. Our operating system stores, we're lucky. We have one customer master file. We have one equipment master file. So the data has always been at our fingertips. And I think what started to happen was, as we started to realize, wait a second, the world's changing and there's a lot better ways to absorb this data and use this data, and we can use it even better than we're using it today. So what we started to do was say, wait a second, let's take the data we have, and rather than just pushing it down through Excel files to managers and hoping the field adopts it, let's start to look at more and more data and see if we can provide, insights and move from, I'll use an example. So we used to get our directions we'd go on the computer, we'd print directions. And that's kind of what we were doing 7-10 years ago. We were printing directions. And then slowly but surely you move to, okay, rather than just print the directions, you can actually go online and get a recommendation of all the different journeys you can take. And you move from, and then your phone would tell you where you're going. And now your phone tells you in real time how to change your route. So I think we were on that journey of, wait a second, I don't want to just print my directions anymore. I don't want to just give my branch managers insights that are stale. I want to give them constantly improving insights and more insights, because there's so many more decisions we can impact rather than just a few every day. And I think we wanted to put that learning on steroids. And we're big enough that there's so many decisions made every day that a little bit of improvement every day adds up to an awful lot of profitability to our bottom line.
And you mentioned that was the journey you went on, where do you guys stand right now? What projects are you currently working on analytically? What are you most excited about that you can do with data?
So my group, the performance analytics group at United Rentals is a center of excellence. So we also have embedded analytical people in our sales analytics group, our ops excellence group, and our digital team, to name a few. So what I would say to you is we are unique in many ways. So we are going digital. The rental business is not overly digital. There's still, most of the transactions are still conducted on the phone, online, but more and more customers are starting to transact online. More and more customers using the website. So that opens up a whole realm of analytics around digital and digital adoption, in terms of using the website, placing orders online. You've got an entire area of operations. I mean, we have one of the largest fleets of trucking. So think about all the different analytics you can do on your delivery fleet. And remember, it's delivery and pickup, because we also pick up equipment. So you've got all that information there, let alone we've got mechanics, thousands of mechanics that we want to make sure, how can we help our mechanics do things? And then you've got the whole area of the regular sales and marketing, the sales analytics area of how to prioritize helping our sales reps every single day. So there's so many different areas that we can help. We can help our teams. I think that's one of the areas that makes United Rentals unique, is we're not just designing a website. We're doing that also now, but we got so many different areas we can take that. So where we are today is there's three areas we're working on. So you've got delivered insight, where you build the insight into the team's overall process. So almost like business intelligence. So how do you deliver insights every day? You've then got, how do you take all this data where you can put mathematics to it and then put it into your operating system and have that mathematics and all these new data sources that you're putting together. How can you put that into the tools that the teams use every day, where they make decisions on what to repair, what to pick up, and how to source the equipment? And that's an operational. And then the last area is where you start getting into machine learning, predictive analytics, and you're trying to say, I'm not just going to give you an insight, I'm going to make a recommendation for you and start to automate some of those processes. So we're kind of on that journey, and I relate that to, we've conquered the map quest, we're moving towards ways in our business.
Awesome. And speaking from a more general context now, how do you see data analytics today, just the general industry of data analytics? You seeing that there's, the opportunities are done? Do you see that there's more that can be done? What is your perspective on that?
So I think that there are nowhere anywhere close to the opportunities are done. I think this is going to expand exponentially. I think there's more and more data sets becoming available. There's more and more external data that's going to become available. And I think companies are scraping the surface. When you think about where data analytics started, it always started in marketing and customer. I think that there's a lot more to do there, especially for companies like ours that are going digital. But think about all the different opportunities there are in the operations side of the business. And I mentioned some of those. And, there are, I'm amazed and excited to see where we end up 5 years from now versus 10 years from now, versus where we were, because I think we're on this, we got going, you get going slow, you start to figure out what you need, the talent you need, how accepting the teams are of it. Then you start to realize there's something there and you start to hire the talent. And then all of a sudden you start to gain momentum. And I think that momentum is going to continue. And I think as we build up the trust in the organization, that combined with the new data sets that we're going to get comfortable with, I think that the ability to use data and the ability to leverage that data from an operational side is just going to grow and grow and grow. it's very exciting to see, not just in United Rentals, but I think when you think about this economy as a whole, where there are all these companies that are out there that are going to, the productivity opportunities that are there are quite large, I think, for a lot of companies that start to leverage data more and more.
Super interesting. You mentioned the talent side of things as well. How do you view the data analytics talent world out there? Do you think it's like a slim pickings? Do you think organizations really need to market themselves and position themselves as thought leaders to attract that talent?
So, it's definitely like the rest of the economy out there. Talent is very, very hard to find. Data analytics talent is equally, if not more in demand. Everyone's looking for that talent. And I think that when you think about talent, I think you got to think of it in a few ways. One is there's the data science talent, but let's not forget about the data engineering talent, because the scientists are going to be a lot less efficient if they're spending a lot of time working with data. So there's also the data engineering talent, because the data engineers help your data scientists be more productive. So you need both types of skills. You can't just have a data scientist. You need those data engineers and those data analysts as well. I'd even say data stewards. So you need a full type of talent. Part of that talent can come from inside the organization. I do see myself being one of them. I'm a Excel trained person. I now don't use Excel very often. I'm using visualization tools. I'm using SQL. I'm not doing complicated SQL, but I have a team that can help me with the complicated SQL, but I can do SQL on my own a little bit. So I've moved from Excel. I'm trained to do things differently. My productivity has gone up greatly. So I think part of the talent comes from internal, and then part of the talent comes from external. And I think that as we've been recruiting, one thing I've noticed is that I mentioned before, we have a lot of different areas. So you definitely have to market yourself. You definitely have to point out what makes us different. United Rentals has a very unique culture. It's a company where we work incredibly well as a team. Everyone is very proud to work here. And this is a company that focuses very much on the customer, but we also focus on our communities and our employees. And I shouldn't leave out shareholders. Obviously, I'm a financially trained person, so it's that shareholders, customers, employees, we're members of our community. So we're also a big veteran hire. So I'm starting to market for you now a little bit. We are. So you definitely have to market yourself. The one thing that I also will tell you is that it's very important for our company. This is a company that is very into relationships with its customers, but there's a lot of all internal relationships here, and you've got to learn the business. A data scientist, a data engineer that sits behind the computer all day and doesn't learn the business will not be as effective as a data person, a data scientist that gets out into our business and starts to learn that business. So I'm also looking for not just the hard skills of data science. I'm looking for interpersonal skills. I'm looking for people that are social. I'm looking for people that want to learn our business, that want to interface with our branch teams, our district teams, our other corporate departments, and learn this business. It makes their job more enjoyable, I think, because they become part of a team. And it also makes their job better because they actually can be more creative because they've heard from the business people and how to use it. So you're definitely marketing it. Recruiting takes a lot of time when you're looking for an open position. It definitely takes time. You're looking at a lot more candidates to fill one position than we ever used to.
Yeah, and you have to be competitive with that as well. And one of the ways to navigate this minefield, as you said, is to look internally. So what do you think from your experience are the best ways for data analytics leaders, that talent within the business, to actually gain more influence on the business side of things as opposed to just being in their technical hub?
So when you mean that, do you mean from a recruiting of talent or from a standpoint of letting the data analytics work we do be adopted and used?
Exactly, the latter.
So the latter. So one thing I've learned over the many years here is something one of our executives once told me a long time ago. He pointed out that if I produce something and push it through and use a push, I'll be training forever because it'll be my idea. Versus if I spend time up front talking to our business leaders, visiting branches, visiting customers, riding with drivers, riding with sales reps. If I integrate their thoughts, their concerns, and it takes a little bit longer up front, I'm agreeable to making changes for their needs, tailoring the work towards how they work, and really listening to them. It becomes their idea, not my idea. And then what happens is, so I may have spent more time up front, but when I roll it out, it's their idea that I'm rolling out, not my idea. And I get adoption that way. And I'm not retraining every day. I'm not pushing every day. So you have to have a good business partner, but we spend a lot of time with our business leaders and throughout the organization to make sure that we're listening to them. I'll give you another example of something I've done in the past. I used to, I've created in past projects, I call it the Council of Doubters. And you have something that you've rolled out, but it's still not getting that adoption. So what we do is we grab from multiple areas of the company, we grab the most outspoken critics, and we listen to what they have to say. We bring them all together, what they have to say, and then we reply and respond to those things and adjust our data and analytics work. And then the biggest critics become your biggest supporters because you became a listener and you integrated their feedback into your tools. And I think that's why when we look to hire data analytics professionals, that's why it's so important to have that interpersonal skill, because we're going to spend that time up front to gain the adoption down the road and not be retraining all the time.
Yeah, and interpersonal skills and upskilling data analytics leaders from the soft skills side of things is exactly what we're about here at the Data Storytellers. And you mentioned that active listening is a really key component of this. What do you think are some of the other qualities of leaders who inspire real change in the business, specifically from a DNA perspective?
So I think that creativity is a big one. I think that you have to find people who are curious. Listening is obviously one of them, but it's also then taking it to that next level. So I look at types of analysts you can have, right? So there are people you work with that they take the order and they fulfill the order. And that's all they do. And there's other people that you work with that you give them the order, and as they're exploring that data, they find other things they never thought they would find. They're experimenting. They're asking more questions. They're teasing more information out. It's that curious nature. And I think that's very interesting. I think I've learned from the team I've hired, when you get good at working with large data sets, you can become very creative and it's easy to be curious. And I think that ability to ask questions, be curious, and guess what? In a productive and professional manner, question the status quo, but do it in a way where you're not saying anyone's doing anything wrong, but it's that creative nature that I think is very important. And luckily for me, United Rentals is the type of place where everyone's got an open door. It's one big team, so if you do it the right way, you may be wrong, but guess what? Failure isn't always bad, because sometimes as you fail, you learn something that you won't fail the next time. So it's that type of organization of people being willing to listen. You have to have people willing to listen, and then your leaders have to be willing to take advantage of that and make those relationships and be creative, be curious, and share your ideas. Don't be defensive though. Some of those ideas are not going to be well received, but don't get defensive, don't get down, and keep trying and keep pushing forward. And that relates to one of your other questions. If you keep doing that, you're going to keep opening up new doors for new uses for your data. It's just going to keep growing and growing.
Absolutely. That's the dream step where we all want to be. And you mentioned that you need to have, or you kind of alluded to humility is a big point. You know, not all projects are going to get picked up, and actually having the drive to keep continuing that. Do you think there's an element though where you have to be positively encouraged by your own ideas, and being able to communicate that, look, I appreciate what you're saying, but this is actually where I'm seeing the business from. I guess what I'm touching on here is more like courageous and assertiveness. And so does that need to be at odds with humility?
I think that does. I think there is a place for that. I think sometimes the place for that is easier in terms of processes, where, you know, we spend a lot of time today training people internally and really trying to convince them, look, the old way you're doing things is just so inefficient. Let me show you a different way. And I would almost say sometimes it's not being courageous, it's being tenacious. It's not taking no for an answer. It's being the person that presents it one way, you don't get the answer you want, but you feel you're right. So you go back and you do a little work, but you present it a different way. And you're presenting the same idea a different way because you really feel strongly about what you're doing. So it may not be courageous, it may be tenacious. It may be a tenacity and not giving up. You know, some things we do, I'll tell you, I've done work where I've shown people work that if I showed it to them 3 years ago, they weren't ready to see it, but I didn't give up. 3 years later, you come back, you've built some more trust, and now, oh, wow, interesting. That's a nice way to look at it. And they're more open. So sometimes it's finding the right time. Sometimes it's just building that trust. Patience. I think I like the word tenacity over because working here, I don't feel it's courageous for me to have to ping our branch teams and our business leaders. I think it's very accepted that we work that way. So for me, it's not courageous. It's being tenacious and not just taking no as a flat out no if you really feel strongly about it. Just come back a little different way at a different time, find the right time and right place, keep building those relationships and building that trust.
And that's super key, right? Especially I think in your role where you have this higher awareness than a lot of data leaders will have, like directors, heads, VPs. You're actually kind of like looking from the board perspective down. What do you think from that perspective are some of the both the opportunities and the challenges for companies and data transformation leaders today?
So I didn't hear the first part. So say more about that. Reword that question because I'm not sure what the question was.
Sure. Just to take it down to its brass tacks, from your perspective as a senior leader at United Rentals, what do you see as some of the big challenges for data transformation leaders today?
Oh, okay. So change management is obviously the big one, right? You're starting to move people's cheese and you're starting to change things. And I think that, if you're just providing new information into a current process, that's much easier. When you're trying to change the process, that becomes more difficult. And that may be where you're talking about being courageous comes in, because now you're trying to influence people to change that process. I think there it becomes very key where you got to get a good business partner. You've got to get the support of the leaders throughout the organization to say, this is worth the effort. It's going to be difficult, but the payoff's going to be much greater. And I related to a lot of that. Think about in our lives, a lot of the tech changes that we've all as consumers that we've all faced. We moved from a regular phone at home to now we have an iPhone or a Android phone that is basically a little computer in your hands. And I'm sure many people were like, why do I need this phone? But now they couldn't operate without that phone. And I think some of the stuff we're going to grapple with, especially as we create more and more of these predictive and automated models, is, wait a second, I'm used to doing it my way. I know it better. But 5 years from now, it's gonna be like, oh, I didn't even realize I ever did that before, because you've listened to me and you've been tenacious and we've put it in there. So, but it's change management, but it's also, I'll go to the technical nature. I think that the volume of data is becoming greater and greater. The variety of data is becoming greater and greater. So there's also that challenge skills wise, as we talked about before, of you're going to need more people to handle that data. You're going to need more technology to handle that data. You need better processes to handle that data to get it out to people. So there's that technical behind the scenes nature. That's always going to be a challenge as the volume of data and variety of data grows. And then there's the implementation of it to gain that adoption and usage and trust. So I'm kind of a broken record. I've said trust a lot. I've said tenacity a lot. But I think that's and from what I can see, there's that's going to be a key challenge going forward.
And again, trust is just something that comes up all the time on the podcast and at masterclasses, et cetera. So what I think is a really interesting piece is actually, yes, trust is super important, but what do you think are some of the best ways to build and facilitate and ingrain that trust?
So best ways to gain trust. So first of all, don't sit behind your computer. You got to go talk to people. That's number one. You gotta talk to people. You gotta understand why the team has done it the way they've done it in the past. Like one of my old bosses here used to say, no one wakes up in the morning to do something the wrong way. They're doing things they think are right. So part of that is understanding why things are being done the way they're being done. If you first understand that, and you're showing empathy towards the people you're working with, you're trying to understand really what they're trying to do, what their main goal is. And sometimes they think their goal is one thing and they're having trouble communicating what they're really trying to do. What's their true need? Like, you're really trying to tease out what's their true need. Like, I use the example, sometimes they're asking for a faster horse. They don't want the faster horse, they want the car. So you're trying to tease out that I want the car, and you're trying to tease out those ideas. And if you start to tease out those ideas and then share information, like, don't jump all the way to the answer. Sometimes you got to let them see some of that development. Oh, I see that now. And you show them things in small bits so that when they get to the end product, they understand it. Because if you think about, as you write a machine learning algorithm, it's very hard to explain what that algorithm does and why it works. It's very hard to unravel an algorithm. But if you show them the data and some of the information you're seeing in the data, some of the visualization and insight you're seeing from the data, when they get to the end product, you're not retraining them on the whole thing. They've learned with you. And I think that's a big part of that business partnership, of having people learn with you. And it goes back to creativity. Like, I'm working on something now I've got millions and millions of records, and I started on one path and I found 4 other paths, and I'm going to share those 4 other paths with my business partner. That's going to probably open up more ideas, and we'll prioritize some, we'll throw some out. But when we get to the end product, I'm not really going to be explaining the end product because I've been showing all those different insights throughout the process. And I think that's the most important. That's the most important way to build that trust.
And we mentioned like all these things like trust and courageousness and all these soft skills throughout the podcast so far. What role did these skills play in your success as a professional throughout your career?
So I like to go back to, I was working at a spaghetti sauce company, and it was very combative between, I won't say combative, but communication wasn't great between sales teams and finance teams. The sales teams always want to spend money on promos, and the finance team's always trying to cut the budget, that type of thing. And I always positioned myself as, I'm going to be the finance person that uses numbers to help the business person tell a story. That's always going to be, it's funny, and I didn't even put it together, your data storytellers. I just put it together, and I said to use the financials to tell a story. It's kind of what you guys, what the data storytellers is all about. So I always wanted to position myself of, what are you trying to do? Why are you trying to do it? And how can I use the data to support you? And sometimes, now that doesn't always mean I'm going to agree with you, but that is at least going to be, I'm going to give you insights that tell you whether you're making you're thinking about it correctly. Because a lot of my business partners over the years have had fantastic ideas. They really know their business well. They're not they use data to some extent, but they don't use data to the level that a data and analytics professional can use. So what throughout my career, I've always tried to bring their ideas to life. And sometimes you bring them to life. Sometimes you bring them to life, but show it with a little bit of a twist. Sometimes you kill the idea, but when you kill the idea, don't just kill the idea, present a different idea. And I remember when I worked in the toy company, I developed a very good relationship with the sales team. When I worked at the spaghetti sauce company, very good relationship with the sales team. And, I still remember a story. I was working at United. I probably had been here, call it 10 years or so. And at the time I had our region finance teams working for me. And there was one of our region leadership teams was struggling with their finance partner. And their point was, he can't keep up with what we're saying. And so I flew out to spend some time with them, and they were talking. They were, I would say, close to functional ADD. They had so many different crazy ideas going around. In an hour conversation, I was walking out with 12 different things I wanted to bring to life. And I think it's that listening to the idea and say, wait a second, what data do I need and how can I prove that to be true or not true? And that's what I've always tried to do and bring that to life. And I think that's why I say one of the things that was lucky for me when I started here is I spent time in the field. So I spent a lot of time in our operating system. So I kind of know where all that data is. I may not be the best. I'm nowhere close to a top-notch SQL person. I'm very rudimentary in SQL, but I generally know, wait a second, that data exists. So if the data exists, and I know 3 other data sets exists, oh, wait a second, your idea might not be as crazy as you think. I can get some help now from all these new data engineers we've done. Now let's bring this data to life. And I think that's what I've always tried to do. And what's happened over time for me is I'm using more and more, I'm using better tools now than I used when I was 7-8 years ago. I've moved from just spreadsheet to tools that can absorb millions and millions of records in very quick, without any lag time. And it's allowing me to be much more creative and bring more and more things to life. So I think that old kind of using it from a finance perspective and now taking it to a greater level, it's just grown as the tools that are available have gotten better. And as I said before, I've been retrained to use those new tools. So I'm doing the same thing I used to do. I'm just doing it at warp speed today.
Awesome stuff. So, you are Kenny Mettel, the SVP of Performance Analytics at United Rentals. How would you describe your role? Are you a change agent? Are you a data champion? Are you an evangelist? Are you like an encourager of data? How would you contextualize that?
So I would say that to some extent, I'm a cheerleader throughout the organization. My group is the type of group, and I give my team a lot of credit. We're not a group that says no. So we say yes as much as we can. And if we don't say yes, we figure out a way to put it on the list or find another way to at least provide information. So I would say I'm a cheerleader. I'm a representative to remind people, don't forget about the data, that there's a different skill set. I'm really trying to make sure teams understand that we've got a lot of people here with very unique skills that can really, that need to be part of your team. So I want to make sure data analytics is represented in our teams. As I said before, we use data all the time. So it's in our lifeblood. We use data, and we've been using it for as long as I've been here. I just want to make sure they realize it can be a lot more. The same vision that our then CEO, now chairman of the board, had when he said, we can do a lot more with data, and why he set this department up. I want to make sure that our business teams, when we do project teams, they realize we've built this department up, use the talent to bring all this data to life. And then there's other things. I would say that innovator. I think I'm part of the innovation team here. We are changing the way we do things. We are changing the way we approach things. So I don't necessarily say a change agent, but I think data analytics is a big supporter of innovation. Innovation in process, innovation in product. And I think that we're a big supporter and a big part of the innovation engine of United Rentals. So I'd say innovator. You could call it data evangelist. I like to say cheerleader. And to some extent, I'm a little bit of an internal salesperson to make sure that we're going to get the resources we need, and I want to make sure that everyone knows that what we've done and the accomplishments we made. So when we need more resources, we can show the value we're creating. So that's how I would. Those are the three words I'd use.
Mm. So when you're trying to leverage that cheerleading throughout the organization, how do you approach educating others?
So it's not just me. So I think that we've set up some communities here where the Center of Excellence spends a lot of time training, and we're training. We've got, as I said, we have analytical people throughout the organization. So a lot of what we're doing there is just cross training to build a community. And I think that's a lot of what we're doing, starting to do here is build a data community, build a data and analytics community. It goes back to that. I don't want to sell every day. If I have the community and they know what we're doing, guess what? It'll happen naturally. And that's what's starting to happen here. It's more and more, using data was natural, but now using the data more and more and using the skill sets we've built, let's make that more natural because the communities have been built and they're seeing it every day.
So with that in mind, do you have a system in place to help you and the team with accurate and prompt execution?
I would say we probably don't have a system. I would say that if we're rolling something out, when we have a process in terms of, we call it bronze, silver, and gold. But bronze is exploratory, silver is kind of pilot, prototype, and gold is production. I wouldn't say we have a system, but we are creating a much more agile environment where we can fail fast, where we can get that feedback. And I would say that when we go to something that we're going to start impacting thousands of our employees or impacting our customers, we make sure that we've got full support of the entire organization. So that's when project management skills start to come into place, where you got to make sure that your business leadership team's involved. You got to make sure that your business partners are involved. You got to make sure your information technology department's involved. So that agile process that we have helps us get there. But when we roll out, some of that project management comes out. And one thing I say about this company is when we get alignment, we get adoption, and you find, it's like everything else. You get your quick movers and your laggards. But if it's got the proper support from the business teams, the laggards will follow the leaders, and it works its way through our organization very, very quickly.
Well, Kenny, great conversation. Great to hear more about what you guys are working on over at United Rentals. Last words on you. What advice would you give for aspiring data leaders?
So I would say it's the same advice I give to any leader, which is never say no. Keep asking for more. Keep looking for more and keep asking for more. So keep trying to get more and more of your teams to be using your skills. Keep taking care of your business partners, and keep looking for more data because it's out there. And some of that data, the one thing I'd say, some of that data is already available to you. We just don't know it's there. It's got to be curated a little bit differently. It's got to be combined a little bit differently. But be creative, be curious, ask a lot of questions. And last thing is, and it's been hard because we've all been stuck in offices or stuck at home for the last couple of years. Get out and touch the people and talk to the people that you work with. Not just the people that work in your group, the members of your team, because that's where all the ideas come from. That's how you build the trust. And I see it here. The people that are successful at United Rentals are the teams that are the groups that learn the business, that are outgoing and talk to their partners, talk to the business leaders, and they're the group that doesn't say no. They're the group that they're successful, they get a reputation, and more people come to them, and then it just builds on itself. It's like a snowball effect. So, and I think that, I wouldn't say you like one thing, like I'm not IT trained, I'm not technically trained, I'm financially trained. The other thing is you got to make sure you have good working relationships with your other functional teams, and make sure you communicate with them on a regular basis. You don't want to sit there and expect that they know what you're trying to do. That's where that selling goes. As data people, we see the world a little bit differently. We know where the world's going. I have ideas that I never had 5 years ago that now I'm having that because I'm in data all day. Don't believe everyone has those same ideas. That's where that innovation comes from. You got to be out there explaining those ideas because you may not need their help today, but 5 years from now, you probably will. And you want to make sure that they're on that journey with you. So, that's that innovation kind of, cheerleading a little bit. My biggest thing is be passionate. Just be passionate. It's such a fun area. You don't, I used to say in finance, I was working with the data. When I'm in analytics, I'm playing with the data. So, have fun. It's an exciting area. The last thing I'll leave you with on that is we all have our frustrations. We all have our successes and failures. But if you actually take a look back, and I always remind myself to take a look back. Yeah, I failed at a lot of things, but we've made a lot of progress. And you sometimes lose that progress, and you lose touch with that progress. We've made a lot of progress, and that progress can build on itself. So never lose. Celebrate your successes. Don't just worry about the failures. Celebrate those successes.
Great advice, Kenny. Thanks so much for coming on the show and sharing your insights, and hope to have you on again soon.
Talk to you soon. Thanks, Paul.